Hello and welcome back to the Book Marketing Tips and Author Success Podcast. This is Penny Sansevieri.
And Amy Cornell.
And first off, I want to lead off by saying y'all are just amazing. So the fake Penny emails, people pretending to be me, it's still happening, and they're all Gmail accounts, but we get enough emails that we know that y'all are paying attention. People are forwarding them to us and saying, hey, I don't think this is you, so that we can then report them to Gmail. I just want to thank you guys all for being so proactive about that, because we just got one again last week, right?
Yeah, just last week. And it was amazing because she said, this doesn't sound like you guys. And we're all so busy. Like the fact that that person took a couple extra minutes out of their day to forward that and include a note and say like, hey, this is happening. It's like, wow, that's pretty incredible.
Yeah, it's really incredible. So we just want to say thank you to everybody. And if you're not sure what's going on, we talked about this, I think, a few episodes ago. Scammers are alive and well and pretending to be me and writing you from a Gmail account. I will never write you from a Gmail account. I will never just write you and go, oh my gosh, your book is awesome. Like out of the clear blue, just, some rando email that you're getting into your inbox. We don't find authors that way. We don't, push them on our services and all this other stuff. And we also don't promise bestseller campaigns and movie deals and all the things. So there's a lot of scams going on there, but you guys are savvy and smart, and just forward them over to myself or Amy or both of us, or you can send them to info@amarketingexpert.com and we'll report them to Google. I actually wrote one back. Did I tell you about that?
I love that.
I wrote one back, and I don't want to say on the air what I said because it really wasn't pretty. It was about scamming authors. And because I was pissed, right? I mean, they're taking my name, they're taking our company name, they're taking our reputation, and they're pretending to be me. And the person actually wrote back and said, well, I'm a marketing person and I don't have a lot of experience, so I need them to think I'm you so they'll hire me.
Is that insane?
How insane is that? I was like, that doesn't even make sense. Like, right. You know what I mean? Anyway, and then they're taking money in Bitcoin. It's crazy. I had somebody on LinkedIn. She's like, are you taking Bitcoin? I'm like, no, we're not holding anything for ransom. I mean, we're not like, you know what I mean? Like we're not taking Bitcoin. She's like, yeah, because somebody wrote me as you and said I could pay them in Bitcoin. I'm like, yeah, I don't even know what Bitcoin is. Like literally, I am not ashamed to admit that. So yeah, you not be paying us in Bitcoin. Anyway, so I want to thank you all so much for reporting those and for being so savvy. And just a reminder to text the word podcast to 888-402-8940. We love hearing from you. You can send us your show ideas, ask us questions, because we do like to answer questions during the show.
Oh, yeah.
Show ideas, questions, all the things. Text the word podcast to 888-402-8940. Now, today, I really love the idea for this show. I'm so glad that Amy was on board. Because when I teach a class, a lot of times I talk to authors about how success leaves clues and how, following other similar authors in your genre who are doing well can help to show you how you can sort of emulate what they're doing. And I think that a lot of times when I teach these classes, this gets misinterpreted. And what the author actually hears is copy them, don't use your imagination. And that's not at all what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that there is a formula, why copying success works and why authors resist it, right? Is actually was the starter title for this show. But a formula is a structure. It's not sameness, right? And there is a formula for success. The problem is, and I know we're going to sort of talk about it, is that there's a lot of resistance with authors when it comes to understanding the formula. And that's where so many authors fail. I mean, we see this all the time, right, Amy?
Yeah, and I like that you pointed out that a formula doesn't mean sameness. It just means there are things that work and things that there are things that are known to work and things that are, I mean, I don't even want to say don't work, but that are much more risky or don't necessarily apply to what you're doing. But there are definitely some key foundational strategies and best practices that I think get overlooked way too much. And then it sends authors scrambling and wondering why things aren't working and all the other reasons we do so many of the episodes that we do, right?
Right, exactly. And there's a lot of studies on consumer behavior. I love geeking out on this stuff. And familiarity, and I'm going to bungle that word, of course, but familiarity reduces perceived risk because people prefer products that feel recognizable, which is part of the reason why, you know, uh, businesses like McDonald's and Starbucks, and when you go in there, you know what you're going to get, and there are no surprises. And products that are recognizable do better because it helps to lower decision fatigue, right? And Amazon shoppers in particular, they make micro decisions. Like there have been some eye tracking studies in e-commerce that show that users form impressions in under a second, which is
Yep.
which is really kind of crazy. So think about, this is not copying. This is really sort of mirroring. This is following a formula. And the formula really tells you how the house is built. You still have to decide how to decorate it. If that's a kind of an analogy that is a little bit maybe more visual and makes some sense.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So let's talk about why. This is one of the particular ones that I love. Why authors resist formulas. So the psychology behind that, again, this is super. I love just geeking out on psychology stuff. So resistance, and we'll take these in order. Amy, I'll take the first one. My book is unique, right? We get it. Your book is unique. Every successful book, though, inside has a recognizable framework. Okay, so let's just take, the romance category, for example. Enemies to lovers maybe doesn't sound unique, right? But within that story is your unique story. So the enemies to lovers is a formula, okay? It is, it has powered hundreds, probably thousands of best-selling titles, right? You're following the trope/formula, but the voice and character execution is yours, right? And that's where I think a lot of authors get misaligned in that I want my book to be unique. So my book is going to be a blend of this genre and this genre and this genre. And you end up trying to combine formulas or ingredients, if I'm going to continue to use analogies, ingredients that aren't really going to net out.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And, the book, any market, not just the book market, but any market thrives on predictable anchors. And that's one of the reasons why, why formulas, why formulas work. And, there's a thing in the show notes, and I agree and I disagree with that. So readers don't buy books because they're unique. I think that's actually not true. I think readers don't buy books that they don't understand.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it has to be unique. It has to look unique. It has to look unique while still following the formula. And that's really where, you have a formula and then you insert yourself and your story and your experience or whatever it is that you're writing into that formula, and you make it your own, which makes it unique, but it still can sit on the same shelf. I mean, Amy, does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense to me because we have this conversation with clients all the time. And it's why a lot of authors actually end up hiring us, because it's hard to get out of your own way for a lot of this, I think. It's so easy because this is your your baby. This is your book. You know, you've put a lot of time and effort into it. So it's very easy for an author to understand what makes a book unique, but it can be more challenging to, like you said, find that balance between uniqueness and what the market is looking for and making sure that those dots are connected properly.
Right. Exactly.
You
Exactly.
know, and I like in the notes, like I do like this one, familiarity with a twist feels safe.
Yes.
So something familiar, like you said, Penny, they don't buy books they don't understand. So making sure that your book as a general concept is familiar to them in a sense that you're answering what they're looking for, but that twist is your unique point of view or what makes your storyline special. You know what I mean? So they come into it going, okay, this sounds like it's on the right track. Plus, I'm intrigued because it's got something special that I haven't heard before.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Exactly. So
And I love this next one.
yeah, go for the next one. Go for it.
Okay, point two, I don't want to be derivative. So this is great. I love this. This is right up my alley. You know, it's easy to confuse market alignment with creative compromise. You know,
Yes.
that's such a sticking point. You know, and we have these are more conversations, not to sound like a broken record, that we have these conversations a lot. Covers follow conventions so readers can find you. Honestly, I'm going to be, you know, there's nothing scarier than somebody saying, like, I have an entirely unique cover that nobody's ever seen before. And I go, oh no, because, well, you want a beautiful, creative, successful, you know, cover that speaks to your topic or your genre and all these things. It's that familiarity that you still need to tap into to make sure that the people that you are trying to reach see your book cover and go, that looks like something I like to read. And if you're so far off from that, that's where the confusion comes in. And that's where they either click away or don't click to your retail page at all.
Right.
You know, so
Exactly.
that's part of the formula. There is a baseline kind of vibe, you know, excuse the woo woo word, that you need to kind of follow along with, but still make it your own because that makes an easy buying decision for the shopper. You know, same thing with categories. Those exist because you want to play nice with the algorithms and you want your books to show up where they need to show up for the right people. You know, these are the kind of things that create being too creative is going to hurt you more than it's going to help you.
Well, and I mean, if your reader has a hard time figuring out what your book is,
Mhm.
the Amazon algorithm is never going to figure out where your book is, where your book belongs, right? And 70% of book purchases on Amazon specifically come from algorithm recommendations, not direct author searches. So I think, we one of the things, because we just did a show actually on Amazon ads, right? And I think one of the points that I neglected to mention, but it just kind of spiked when we started talking about this, is don't pay for your name
Right.
when you're doing Amazon ads. Like, because I don't necessarily want, I mean, if and my name is fairly unique, like I get it, but if I'm not coming up on Amazon and somebody is searching for my name, which rarely happens, by the way, right? Because the majority of people do not look directly for authors, right? Then we have a problem. So you have to come up under your correct genre, and if Amazon can't figure out where you belong, that's a problem, and that's where putting your book into a formula that is a known formula that works where it belongs is going to help you to sell more books.
Right. And I love this. You're not copying creativity, you're copying clarity. And I love
Yeah.
that so much. You know, so we're not saying you need to go and do exactly what another author is doing. Actually, please don't do that. But the kind of things that we're talking about during the show, these are the kind of things that are foundational for every book out there if it's going to find its people, you know. If
Right.
you want to get it in front of the like there is a formula to making this work. And then that is where the creativity comes in, is how do you then stand out while staying true to these formulas that have proven to work over and over again?
Right. Right, exactly. And I think the final resistance, which is kind of my personal favorite, um, I should invent my own path. And this is really where the ego kind of quietly shows up, right? Um, we understand that you want to create your own path. And this is, books are uniquely personal projects, right? There's the creativity, there's maybe your personal story, whatever that is. But even like restaurants follow cuisine categories, right? Movies follow genre conventions. Tech startup models, you know, model pricing on competitors. Everything has a formula. So you can still invent your own path while still following the formula. So if you're listening to this, you're just like, well, I'm not really sure. I don't really know. Make sure that, when you're looking at your particular genre, that you're adhering to all of those different formula metrics. For example, a book cover in a particular genre has, sort of like a look to it, for example, right? And every genre, every genre has their particulars, even though the book covers are all different. There are particular formulas that good, cover artists and things like that follow. The same thing is true, obviously, for your categories, which Amy was just mentioning, and your keywords and things like that. The verbiage in your retail description,
Mhm.
you can still invent your own path and follow a formula. Because I had a publisher one time tell me that you can reinvent the wheel all you want when you are a household name. But when you are starting out and you're paving your own path, you have to follow the designated routes. And I realize that sounds like we're just killing all your creativity, but truly, those are the things that will help you to be successful and allow you at some point to create, to do your own thing.
Right. And I love the note. Sorry, y'all. I mean, I love when we make notes in here that really speak to what the pain points are, because one of our notes is reinventing doesn't make you innovative. It just makes you tired. And it's like, I so feel that.
Oh, I know, right? Yeah.
It really is true that, and we do hear that from a lot of authors as well, that they just get tired of trying to figure out how to make all this work. And so that's another great reason to kind of embrace the idea of this formula, because it does give you something to work from. So you can feel assured that you're okay, like I'm on the right path here.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm doing the
Mm-hmm.
right things in the right order. I'm assessing what needs to be assessed, because it's challenging. But I mean, that is one of the things that I tell so many of the authors that reach out to us to potentially work with us, that we are big on doing the right things in the right order at AME.
Yeah.
And because it really does make such a huge difference. And for over 2 decades, we've seen authors struggle with trying to get back on track after doing things in all the wrong orders.
Right.
And it's so much harder. So it's like, we really like to emphasize that to save all of y'all a lot of heartache.
Right. Exactly. All right. You want to take the next one?
Yeah. What a successful author formula actually includes. This is a big one.
I love that. Go
I know.
for it.
Like, here we go. Okay. Market signals. Category placement that matches reader expectations and keywords that mirror how readers search. This is so important. And I can't tell you how many emails I get a week saying, do you use this program, or do you use this program, or do you plug in this? And it's like, believe it or not, we are very old school when it comes to figuring out categories and keywords, because what really works is mimicking what people are doing on Amazon already to find books that they end up purchasing. So these are really important. Like, this is a huge part of the formula. You need to be meeting readers in ways that they are actively performing on Amazon. You can't expect them to show up looking for your book, or, like Penny already said, searching for your name. They're looking for something they know they already want. And so categories and keywords are a great way to connect those dots. So you end up showing up in front of, on the right searches for the right people looking for books like yours. And I think that's a huge one, Penny. It's really hard to step away sometimes and realize come to terms with the fact that like nobody's actually searching for your book, but that's okay. They're searching for books like yours. And that's where the sweet spot is. You want to insert your book in those searches.
Right. Right. Exactly. And that's where the visual language comes in. So the covers
Mhm.
signal the genre in under a second. And we've done a whole bunch of shows on covers. So we don't have to spend a ton of time on this because I do want to get to some of the tips and how you can figure out whether, you know, some signals to figure out whether or not you're battling this. But the covers are, the cover has to match the genre promise, right? It has to signal the genre. So I think that, and then when authors get creative outside the genre norms, that's when you start to get into problems. And we've actually had situations where the writing has just been like an author will come to us and they're like, this book hasn't done anything. I don't know what I'm doing. And I'll read through the book. And I mean, the writing is spot on, amazing, but it's buried in a cover that isn't sending the right signals to the consumer.
Right. 100%. It's not doing the book justice,
Right. Exactly. Okay.
And then, I love this one. Narrative promise, a hook that answers who is this for? Why will I care? This is also where you put in the genre expectations, the emotional, intellectual, the practical. You really, again, we've talked about it a lot. You can't expect shoppers, readers to spend a lot of time trying to figure things out. So these are just very simple ways. They're nuanced, but very simple ways to ensure within that split second that you have their attention, they instantly see, oh, this is a kind of book I'm looking for. This is, you know what I mean? It piques their interest. So the narrative promise is super, super important. You want to make sure and we talk about that a lot too, don't bury the lead, right, Penny? Like you don't want to wait till the end of your description, or you don't want a really vague title without a subtitle. If that reduces the likelihood of somebody that's shopping for books is going to understand what your book is about,
Right.
Put it right out there. This is who it's for. This is what makes it great. Like lead with the best stuff, like that is always going to work in your favor.
Yeah. Yeah. That's absolutely true. And then I think that the final one on this is the reader path. So where does this book fit into the reader's life, and what problems does it solve or experience does it deliver? Now, this is kind of unique because when you're talking, this isn't necessarily genre fiction doesn't tend to, I mean, genre fiction does have to have a reader path. Let me just back up a little bit because I'm getting a little bit scrambled. But the problem that it solves and the experience that it delivers is pretty unique to our nonfiction authors that are listening, right? So when you're talking about, like, let's say, for example, how to be successful, just right, so how to be successful, you have to really figure out where in the success funnel your book actually belongs. Like, is it just at the beginning? Like, this is your first time trying to, I don't know, whatever it is, build a business or whatever it is that you're doing, start a singing career, who knows? Like, where does it actually fall in the consumer's path? Mm-hmm. And you have to figure out where that is. Your cover has to align, your book description has to align, and obviously the content of your book, your book has to align too.
Right. Yeah. And this goes back to what you said on a recent episode, Penny. And I think it was one of our first of the year where you said, it's really not about you. But I love that so much because it's true. Like at some point you have to shift from the about me to about the reader, the buyer, right?
Right. Right. Exactly. And I think that, and I'm looking forward to getting the signs that authors are fighting the formula, because I think we could spend an hour just talking about that. We won't, but we could. But it's really, really true. I think that in the majority of cases, the reason that these problems happen is authors just want to be unique. And I get it. We all want to be unique. We all want to stand out. We feel like the competition is fierce. We want to get out ahead of this. We want to put something that's really going to pop. And in doing so, you end up, ignoring the formula, and you wind up in the next phase of this podcast conversation where you're fighting the formula. Amy, why don't you let's divide these up. These are really, I don't want to say fun. They're not fun if you're listening and this is you, but they're interesting to talk about. So do you want to take the first one on this?
Sure. Yeah. So red flag number one is when you hear that it fits in multiple genres.
Huge problem. Sorry. I just
Yeah.
I just had to step up. So I'm like, oh yeah.
Yes. It's like that's not a thing. And the reason is because once you start splitting your focus, and this is where, my marketing hat is put on for sure. Once you start splitting your focus, very little of what you do becomes effective. You really want to have a focus on who your readers are, how you're going to speak to them, what your branding is going to be like. And if you are trying to appease multiple different reader markets with a single title, unfortunately, it's going to be just result in a lot of your efforts being relatively lackluster and nobody feeling special or like they're being seen or like their needs are being met or their genre tastes are being, catered to. It just ends up being diluted. And so I get it. A lot of authors, I think, like to go in that direction with multiple genres because they think it's expanding who their potential reader market is, but it actually works against you and it makes everything less effective. So you're much better off, especially when you're building your author career, to firmly cement your title into a genre that you have done your due diligence to learn about, to know what kind of books are trending, to know what authors are doing well. Success definitely leaves clues. Really understand what you're getting into. And I assure you, everything that you do in terms of marketing, branding, positioning, anything with your platform is going to work for you that much harder.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I think that and I'm glad that you ended on that because I think that when you when your book is misaligned and when you're not following a formula, everything becomes so much harder, right? Everything feels like an uphill battle. So if you're listening to this and your marketing has felt like an uphill battle, you may want to take a look and see if you're round hole square peg kind of thing with your book. And this isn't, so I just want to make sure as we're finishing up these signs that you're fighting the formula. The majority of cases, these are quick fixes, right?
Oh yeah.
So, in some cases, and I'm going to talk about the cover in just a second. Maybe your cover is just misaligned. Maybe your book description needs to be tightened up. Your genre needs to be changed. Like the book is fine. It's just sitting in the wrong place, or you tried to get too creative with the genre. Now, if you wrote the book and if you wrote a romance novel that has werewolves and, I don't know, enemies to lovers and secret baby and,
Sorry.
cozy Christmas romance or whatever, then you probably have to rewrite the book. But that's generally not what we see. Generally, what we see when authors are, really struggling is, like Amy mentioned, there are multiple genres. The second one is an author who says, I don't want a typical cover. I get it. I write books. I don't want typical covers either, but I do want a cover that is recognizable in the industry, like in the genre. I want something that when an author, which obviously I write for authors, when an author looks at it, they're like, oh my gosh, this book's exactly what I need. This is what I want. I don't want anything. I want something unique, but I don't want anything that deviates from that. Full stop. Right. Because everything will suffer. People do judge a book by its cover.
100%. And I feel bad saying that sometimes to authors because it can be very deflating, but know that, like Penny said, it is one of the simplest but most impactful things you can do for a book that you feel is not landing well in the market.
Yeah. And I met an author.
We've seen clients do it before and it is just mind-blowing, right, Penny?
Yeah. I met an author years ago, and I can use this as an example because this author later went back and changed their cover. But this book was set sort of like around the Vietnam War. So the cover so he wanted everything that was in the book on the cover, right? So he had a jungle, right? He had a picture of Nixon. He had, I think, weed on the cover. Like, then he had some tattoos, and then there was a lava lamp because it was the 60s, right? And I told him, I said, I'm getting a little bit of a headache looking at your cover,
Mhm.
and he said, well, the reason that he did it that way, which, kind of made sense when your arm was coming. He's like, I wasn't, I wanted to make sure that I appealed to everybody, right?
Mhm.
Because, like maybe somebody that likes lava lamps will pick up his book. I don't think that's a thing, but whatever. And I get it. He was feeling a little desperate because he wanted to sell books. So he wanted to make sure that his cover appealed to everybody. And guess what? When your cover appeals to everybody, it's going to appeal to nobody. And consequently, he went back and his new cover was phenomenally awesome. I mean, it was amazing. But he said to me, he's like, I really had to get out of my own way. And I'm like, yeah, I agree with that. And completely.
Yep.
So, yeah. All right. So next
I
one.
love a success story. Yeah. Reviews say it's good, but confusing. And I
Right.
would say, this is we could kind of lump any sort of review that has positive and negatives in it. You know what I mean? I think that's kind of where, you got to take constructive criticism for what it is instead of just writing it off, which can be really hard. Like, I get it. But at the same time, if you really want to do this and you want to be successful at this and you want to be making positive strides in the right direction, you have to, like Penny just said, get out of your own way and actually, take that constructive feedback and think, is this true? If so, what can I do about it?
Yep.
And a lot of times, like Penny already said, a lot of times it's positioning. A lot of times it's not necessarily because there's anything wrong with the content of the book, but for whatever reason, some way that you're presenting it is bringing in the wrong people that were expecting one thing, but kind of got something slightly different.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, once you get to that point and those reviews are posted, there's nothing you can do about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Other than go back and fix what can be fixed. And
Right.
so, yes, like after you're done throwing things across the room at your desk, kind of focus in on, all right, what did they say? And is there something I can do? Is there a silver lining in this review that said a few things that I don't want to hear?
Yeah. And we've all been there. We've all been there with, and as Amy said, not all reviews are going to be deal breakers for your book. But if there is a through line of reviews that are popping up saying this wasn't what I expected, then you probably have a problem.
Right. Exactly. Yep.
And the final one, and we spent, so last week's show, if you want to learn about Amazon ads, we did that last week. Ads are getting clicks, but no sales. So your automatic ads on Amazon, I tell you, your automatic ads, you have to be careful of them. And we talked about this in the show last week. So definitely tune into that if you haven't listened. But man, they will tell you if your book is sitting, if there's a problem with your optimization, like flat out, because Amazon won't know where to put it and the ads will just look bad. I don't know how else to say it. You know what I mean? And I think that, the takeaway from this is, or should be, that every best-selling author that you admire operated inside a framework before they mastered it, right? A formula is not designed to erase your voice, but hopefully amplify it. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So again, the formula, you put your own story inside that formula. It makes it unique, but follow the formula. I can't tell you how many, well, first off, you'll save yourself a lot of time, but also probably thousands and thousands of dollars in marketing and doing all the right things.
Mm-hmm.
Amy, any final thoughts before we wrap up?
No, I love this. And I want to go back to your early example, Penny, because I thought that was perfect. Like, there are things that need to be done correctly in order to build a house. You know what I mean? To code, to structure, so it doesn't fall on you in the middle of the night. But being able to design the interior I loved that example. I thought that was such a perfect real life example of why this is so important. There are absolutely right ways to go about things. And then after you get that cemented in, then the creativity comes.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And it's something visual that everybody can kind of get their mind around. So we hope that you have enjoyed this episode. We love show ideas. By the way, even if you're not part of our fun little texting group, you're welcome to email us. All of our contact information is in the show notes, but you can text us podcast. Text the word podcast to 888-402-8940. And we love reviews. So wherever you listen to podcasts, please leave us a review. And one of the things, Amy, you mentioned this last week in the show about the reviews. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but you said something really smart. Well, you always say smart things, but you said something really smart about tell listeners in your reviews how the show helped you. What was that?
Oh, yes. I love, we joked because Penny and I both love hearing how wonderful we are, of course, but so you can say that too. But if you only have a few minutes to leave a review, do it for your fellow authors and write a quick review that, gives them a tip or a trick or something that you learned, or refer back to an episode that was really helpful for you, because people look at reviews to figure out if this show is going to help them. And so if you've been a listener for a while and it's helping you, we would love a review that actually tells other authors why it's working for you, what stands out, why they should listen to it. Because again, as much as we love the fanfare, we really do this for the educational aspect, and you can really help other authors by kind of calling attention to something in your review that will help them along the way.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. I'm glad you mentioned that. We want to thank you so much for listening, and we hope the show has been helpful for you, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.